Hello, Lambda School students. My name is Ryan Hamblin. Welcome to this little introduction on Git and GitHub. Today, we're going to be showing you a little bit about this tool that you're going to be using throughout your entire course here at Lambda School. In fact, as things continue to adapt and change, there may be updates to this process as we go along. But the foundation of everything that you're going to be doing exists on your ability to use Git, which is a version control language. What do I mean by that? So what Git allows us to do, it allows us as developers to save a master copy of our project somewhere. And it allows everyone around the world working on that project to clone a version of that master copy and basically work off what we call a remote. So there's one of our first kind of keywords today, remote. And I'm going to write all these down in our README as we go along, and we'll get there in just a moment. So when you're working from a remote, you're making changes. And what that is a reflection of is your personal machine that you're actually writing the code on, so your computer. Okay? So when you're making these changes, you need a way to keep track of changes, because let's say that developer X and developer Y are working on the same project in the same files. Now, version control, like Git, and version control software like GitHub, Bitbucket, and many others that are out there, those are just two of the more popular, allow us to keep copies of that and allow us to essentially keep a flow in such a way that developer X's changes do not get overwritten by developer Y's changes. Okay, so it is a very commonly used tool in the industry today. Everyone who is a software developer knows how to use Git. It's just something that comes with the package as you go out into the job force. And I'm sure that as you've gone through the pre-course material, you've learned a little bit more about it. So it's maybe a little bit basic for you. But today what we're going to be talking about specifically is this idea of forking and cloning, and kind of how you're going to be receiving your homework here, or the projects you're going to be working on at Lambda School. And over the weekend, your first weekend, you're going to actually be able to practice this and show us your ability to do so. Okay, so what I've done is I've gone and created this project called Pre-Course Git Fu. And what it allows us to do is sort of keep a master project up on GitHub. Okay, so here at Lambda School, we have an organization. So when you see a project that we give you, you're going to see the project's name, and then the person who owns the project, which in this case is Lambda School. Okay, so that's how you identify what project or what repository you're going to be working with. All right, so if you look at these tabs here, once you get this URL, which we're going to be sending out to you tonight, once you get this URL, you're going to be able to access this repository, okay? And we're going to have some instructions that I'm going to write for you right now in live, and I'm going to show you how to use this repository by following the instructions, okay? So you can see that we have like an overview here of what files exist in our machine, or in this repository right here under this code tab. So if I'm right here with code tab selected, I can see that there's one file and it's a README file that is empty. There's nothing in it. We're going to change that in just a minute. Okay. So other things to take note, once again, the name of the directory or repository that you're working with and who it belongs to. Okay. So other things to take note is this issues tab and the pull request tab. There's 4 other tabs here that you can take the time to learn a little bit more about on your own. But essentially, where you're going to be spending most of your time is in this code tab and in this pull request tab. Okay, so there's also a few buttons up here where you can go and actually star repositories. If you go and look at like my profile, for example, you can see all the repositories that I've starred to keep track of as I continue to go about learning as a software developer. Okay, and then you also have followers, so it's really social. People can follow you, and you can follow other people, and then once again you can follow other people, and then of course your repositories, so projects that belong to you or forks that belong to you as well. Buzzword, I just said the word fork. Let's go talk about it. Let's go figure out what a fork is real quick. Let's go all the way back to this page here where we're at the pre-course Git Fu repo that lives under the Lambda School organization. So there's this button right here in the top right called fork. If I click on that button, it's going to pop up this little modal, and I can assign where I want this fork to be cloned to. And I chose my very own GitHub user account, not any of the other organizations that I'm a part of. And so something changed here. We're looking at pre-course Git Fu. However, it is a forked copy. So you can see the name of the repository and who it belongs to. And then we get this little like fun little icon here that shows that it's a Git fork. So we have forked this repository from Lambda School pre-course Git Fu. Awesome. That's all it takes to fork a repository. You probably already know this and you're probably like, come on, Ryan, let's get to the good stuff. We're about to get there. So now let's say you want a copy of this downloaded to your local machine. How you would do that is click on this clone or download button. Now I use everything through HTTPS. If you feel like you are configuration savvy and you want to SSH into things, that's awesome. You can use SSH as well. Keeps it a little bit more secure for your own personal consciousness or conscience. And so, but for me, I just use everything HTTPS. Most of what I do is in open source anyway. So I just clone a copy of this. So this is what I do. I just basically, click on copy to clipboard. This just basically controlled or command seed this URL to my clipboard. So now I can run over to my terminal, which I like to use Hyperterm, which is built in JavaScript, Electron. It's pretty fantastic. And I'm going to make a place for this to live. Now, how we make a directory for something to live is to simply say mkdir. This is going to create, and I'll just do this as an example so you can see some command line tools here. Cool. So I can make dir practice dir if I want, and this is going to create a folder on my hard drive called practice dir. So if I were to actually list out the directories and everything that's inside of where I'm at right now, which is called CS5, okay, that's you guys. Well, this could potentially be CS6, 7, 10, 15. It doesn't matter. It just so happens that I'm recording this as CS5 is about to begin. So if I were to list out the things that I have in there, you can see I have two directories. One is the one that I just created. So let's cd into, change directory into practice dir. Okay. Now I can see that there's nothing in this directory. But I can use a command called touch to say touch like index.html. And I can create a file inside of my directory. So now inside of practice dir, you can see that's where I'm at. Everything begins right here, where you can see exactly where you're at, what user's interfacing with this machine, with this computer. And I can say index.html. Awesome. But that's just to get you, up to speed with those few commands. cd, change directory, make dir, create directory, and touch, create a file. Those are three very commonly used commands. Now you can see that I've actually gone too far out. I'm back at the root, so I'm going to move back into CS5, and I'm going to run what we call a git clone, and then paste in that URL that I copied from GitHub. Let me scroll over so you can see the whole command there. And git clone is actually going to say, hey, git, go ahead and create a directory, whatever this is called, okay, wherever we're at, but you're going to copy everything that exists up in GitHub at this URL, and you're going to then clone that to my local copy here on my remote, which is my computer, okay? So now once I run that and execute it, you're going to see remote counting objects. There were 3 objects, remote 3, delta reuse. There's this little message here that did all this Git stuff for you. And it basically was able to say it unpacked 100% of all the objects, and you got your version control. You got your copy of that repository. So now you get everything involved with what's called a Git history alongside of that. So because this was a repository with a Git history already included, we just basically, we skipped the step of having to do like initialize Git repository for this project. So now what we can do is if I look at what I'm looking at here, I did an ls to peek into this directory, you can see that I have a new directory called pre-course Git Fu. So if I cd into that, ooh, check it out. We have, let me just clear my console. We have a README file. So now this allows us to open up this project on our remote, on our computer. So I can say code, because I have an extension to use Visual Studio Code in my command line editor. And because of that, I can open it up, and boom, we're right there inside of VS Code. It's pretty nifty. And so now let me zoom in a little bit, and you can see that we have that README that exists from our repository. Okay, so awesome. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to start changing this README, and I'm going to talk to you about the Git flow that we use here at Lambda School, and is very commonly used across the board. So now let's make some changes to our README file in our repository here. Okay, so I'm gonna, since I use VS Code, I can open up this console here, which gives me an IDE built right into my text editor. And for some reason, yep, okay, cool. My cursor's being all weird. Hey, sorry about that. Cursor problems. Who's got them? Okay, so if you check it out, I can look at terminal, and I actually have a built-in terminal to my text editor. It's one of the reasons why I really like VS Code. It comes with this right out of the box. And so let's make some changes to this README file, and let's talk about what happens in the process of Git. Okay, so let's say that I wanted to add a heading called pre-course Git Fu. And I'm going to save that file. Now, one thing that's interesting is I already have a Git history involved with this project because I cloned it from GitHub. So I can run a Git status, and I can check that I have made some changes in my Git history. My history is not clean. It's what we call dirty history. So I have some changes that I need to actually stage in order to make that happen. And the staging command that we use, in fact, I'm going to start writing down some terms right away so you can see what I've been talking about. I've said some words like repository. Okay. I've said words like, what are some other words that I've used? I've used quite a few already. Git, version control. Okay. I've used the word clone, fork, and then history, and staging. Okay. So what we do is when we make these changes and save our changes to a file, we instantly get this thing from Git. As soon as that file saves, Git is like, hey, something in that file has changed at this remote. I've also said the word remote. Okay. So something in this file has been changed. There's a save that's taken place here that this remote has dirtied up. Okay. And so we want clean histories with our Git. Okay. So one of the things that you can do to check the status of your Git history is run that git status command. Okay. So this command allows you to see what changes you have already made. All right. Now, let's move on to see what we need to do with those changes in order to track them through our Git history. So there is a command for staging our changes called git add. Okay. Now, you can do a couple of things here. You can select directly the files that you want added. So I just sort of started typing capital README, and I hit the tab button, and it was able to tab through the whole thing as a short command. So now it knows that this is a file in my machine. Git knows that it can do that, so it can tab through it since it found it and was like, we can auto-complete that. So now if I run this git add readme, it's going to actually put it into what's called the staged change. So if I actually look and run a git status now, I have a change that has taken place, and that change has been staged. Okay, so we're ready to do something with that change. Okay, so that's step one. Let's actually, now we're going to have a dirty history again because I'm going to save this file after I make these edits. So step one, or let's just say steps to our Lambda school Git flow. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do is obviously you're going to fork repository. Okay, you've seen me do that already. And then run a git clone with the repository URL. So go ahead and fork it, clone it. You'll hear that phrase all the time. Okay, now once we have some changes, so we're going to say after changes made. Okay, first step is we're going to run a git status. All right, and then our next step after we run the git status is if we have red, then we can say git add, and then add in the file name. Okay, in this case for us, it was simply readme.md. Okay, and then I like to make sure that everything that I have staged and I'm about to commit, said another word there. Okay, everything that I have staged and I'm about to commit, I actually I want to look at to make sure that I have staged already and those changes are ready to go. So I run a git status again to check what is staged. Okay, so let's actually work on this next piece right here. So if I come in here now and I run a git status, what do you think it's going to be? You think it's going to be green or red? Well, if I save this file and I've told Git that I have some sort of dirty history, check it out. I have one change that's staged, okay, from my previous save and my previous stage, and another unstaged change. So I need to remedy that. So I can run a git add readme. Now, if you had a lot of files here and you knew that you've only opened and made changes in the files that you want added, you can run the wildcard flag and simply add all of the changes to your Git staging history. So if I run a git status now, you can see that everything is just staged in that one file. We have a clean history so far. Okay, so no longer do we have any red changes that we need to be aware of. So now we do what's called committing. So we run a git commit with a -m flag, and what that's going to do is going to tag this commit that you're making to the repository with a message made changes to the README. Cool. Awesome. And then we do this thing called pushing. And I'm going to show you that in just 1 second. But first, we need to come up here into our terms, and we need to define what our terms are going to be here. So we have a push as well. And that's going to be the final piece that you do for your Git flow here. Okay? And I'm going to show you exactly the command that we need for that. I don't like the way that this is laid out already, so I'm going to make some changes. And I'm going to say that these are terms for learning Git. Okay? And then I'm going to change this into a heading as well. So now I'm using Markdown syntax. So if you're unfamiliar with what I'm doing here, all it is Markdown. So you can look that up, and you're going to have plenty of time to learn a little bit about Markdown throughout the course. We have an entire project dedicated to you working on writing documentation and building an API from scratch. So we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But for now, you need to know that this is your flow for making changes. Okay? So what happened now, I'm going to run a git status again. Uh-oh, we have a dirty history. So what do I need to add? Think about it for a second. I just run a git status, so I can look. Okay, let's look at my little cheat sheet here. Okay, I need to git add, and I can either add the file name or I can run the wildcard. For me, I know it's just one file that I changed, so it's very easy for me to commit that or to stage that commit. So now what I need to do is actually commit it. So I want to tell Git now that this is an important enough change that I'm going to commit that to your history, and you are going to keep track of that Git from here on and here out. Okay. So what I need to do is run a git commit -m made change to README. Okay, and that is everything that you would need to know for that commit message. Okay, check it out. So made change to README is the tag on this commit. There's an index to that commit placed in this repository to find it if you need to backtrack. This is why version control is super awesome, because if you mess up and commit some changes you didn't want, you can always revert back to a previous commit. So, and we had one file changed with 21 lines inserted. And so let's actually check our git status. Check it out. We are clean. However, it says our branch is ahead of origin/master by one commit. You need to git push to publish your local commits. So I have local commits that need to be pushed up to my fork. And so that's where this next command comes in. So I need to run a git push. And the first time that I do this, I need to tell it that I want it to go the upstream is origin master, which is my master copy of my fork, which is a copy of Lambda School's fork, or Lambda School's repository. So now, once it gets through this process of saying, okay, counting 3 objects, delta compression used, blah, 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 blah. Okay, to GitHub HTTPS, Ryan HCA, pre-course, like, awesome, check it out. So we pushed everything up to track remote branch master from origin. So now we have this sort of flow between our machine and our GitHub. Okay, so now if I go back to GitHub and I refresh the page, you can see that there were changes made to this repository. Okay, all right, so this is what's super cool here. And this is what is going to be your homework in just a minute. For your first piece of homework to have completed by the time you get to class on Monday. So now if I go and I actually look at the master copy, look, nothing lives in this master copy. Okay, everything that I just did was found at my own fork. So if you look here, my fork is actually more up to date than my master copy because I've changed the README file and added all of these things. So here's what we call a diff. Here's the previous version of what the repository looked like before I made this commit, and here's what it looks like now after I added all of those changes in. And so what I need to do now is I go back here and I need to actually open up what's called a pull request. Now a pull request is something, you saw that I just clicked on pull request and then I clicked on new pull request. I'll go back so you can see me do that one more time. From the Lambda School pre-course Git Fu, I clicked on the pull request tab and I opened up what's called a new pull request, or I started a new pull request. Okay, this means it's a request to merge my changes into what master's changes are going to be. And this is how you're going to submit all of your code and your work here at Lambda School for review. Okay, so if you look at the base, that's the master. That's what we want to look. And right now it's comparing to master. Let's actually compare to our fork. So what you can look at right here is compare changes across branches, commits, tags, and more below. If you need to, you can also compare across forks. And that's what's super cool about this. So now I have the base fork, which is Lambda School / pre-coursework with the base master, and the head fork, which is what I want to compare it with, which is Ryan HCA. So this is my fork here. And then just compare the master branch there, which you don't need to worry about branching right now. And then what this is going to do is it's going to say, do you want to discuss the review changes and in this comparison with others? So I can say create pull request, and how you're going to do this is you're going to say made change to README. That was my commit message, but I'm going to delete that and I'm going to say Ryan Hamblin, homework submission. Awesome. So that's the title of my new pull request, and I'm just going to create it. Now, this pull request is just going to live in the master fork under the master branch. Sorry, I'm trying to zoom in to the right spec right here. There we go. Awesome. So if you look right here, we're at the Lambda School pre-course Git Fu repo once again, with that being the, right here. So if I open up the pull request tab so I can look at code, this is the master. If I look at pull request, notice that nothing is in master yet. The README is just as is. So with a pull request, basically I'm submitting this for review. This is how open source software is built. If you had a project at PayPal that you were working on as an open source project, and you're a developer at PayPal and you're working on open source software, but somebody from Airbnb is trying to push commits and changes to your repository, this is how they would do this. They would go through the process of submitting a pull request. And that's why we get you used to it here at Lambda School, because it's very, very common. So now what I can do as an instructor, pretend that Ryan Hamblin, this pull request was made by a student. I can look at the changes here, and I can see side by side the changes that need to exist in this repository. Now, what I'm actually going to do is submit a review. Hey, pal, things look pretty good. Awesome. And I'm just going to submit that review so that Ryan knows, me, the student from the instructor, how things were. And every single time that we do this, we're going to go through and we're going to leave you feedback. We can do it line by line or however we want. But I can go back now to the conversation that we have been having about this pull request and, say there's a back and forth between things. And I can just say, I'm going to actually merge this pull request into master. Your pull request will never be merged into master unless there are issues that you open up that may be typos in a README, or like some technology is not actually working the way that it's expected to. Then you could do this. You could open up a pull request and we would potentially merge that right into master. But if I merge this pull request and I confirm it, now the master branch has been merged with Ryan's fork, okay? So, and we're never going to do that for you unless it's something that's absolutely necessary. But now you can see the master fork has this awesome little README that's available for you to play around with this weekend and turn in before you get to class on Monday. At least submit one pull request. So what I'm going to have you do is I'm actually going to have you open up a new fork of this repository. Okay. So step 1, open a fork from this repository. Step 2, fork it, clone it, download it the same way that you saw me do it in this video, and get everything up and running on your local remote. And then what you're going to do is go into the readme.md file, and you're going to fill all these in. So I just want you to start Googling all this stuff, like what is a repository? Okay, Google what is Git and version control, and write a one-sentence answer to all of these quick bullet points. What is Git history? What is cloning? What is forking? What is staging? And then write these down in your own words. Some of the stuff you can pull right from what I've already talked about. What is a remote? What is commit? What is push? And these are all, you're going to have to say, what is Git clone, Git fork, Git history, Git staging, Git remote when you Google them, okay? And you can also use their documentation here from GitHub. They have wonderful documentation, place for you to explore everything that you need to know about it. If you look down, let's see here if I can find the documentation real quick. Get help with GitHub. Here's a community forum. So you can go and you can research all of this stuff right here from within the GitHub community, and you could answer those questions. Now, once you're done answering those questions and filling in the README with your answers, what you're going to have to do is open up. You're going to Git, follow the Lambda School flow, the Git flow, and make sure you push your changes to your fork. Okay, and then what you're going to do is you're going to come back in here and open up a pull request so that I know that you watched this video and you have been playing around with and fiddling around with Git before your first weekend or before your first start day. So we're already giving you homework. I know it's rough, but I think that you can manage it, and I think it's something that you're all going to come to get more and more familiar with as you move along. And once again, we're going to have a lot more of these videos as you continue to move throughout your first few weeks and months of your your growth here at Lambda School. So thanks for joining me. Thanks for tuning in. And I hope you have a wonderful weekend and get a lot of good rest, because on Monday, we're going to hit the ground at full speed, and it's going to be a blast. We'll see you then.